The greatest win in Minnesota Timberwolves history. It's the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Can you breathe? How's your heart? Are your hands shaking? The Minnesota Timberwolves are going to the Western Conference Finals with a 98-90 Game 7 come-from-behind win over the defending champion Denver Nuggets. Pinch me, Jack Borman. I might be dreaming. My name's Sam Ekstrom. I'm at Sam Ekstrom on Twitter/X. Jack Borman has been with us all year long, reacting to all the games. He's with Candace Hoopus at JR Borman 13. We are going to get into all of the nitty-gritty of this game. Celebrate with us in the comment section. Let us know where you are watching from, how you're feeling, any questions you have. We are so excited to be here. We're going to go a little long tonight, and we also welcome those of you watching us on Locked On Sports Today, the Locked On NBA YouTube channels, an expanded audience after this epic Timberwolves victory. That is brought to you by Prize Picks. It is the best way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA, for a first deposit match up to $100. Jack Borman, I asked all those questions off the top. Are you shaking? How's your heart? Answer those for me. How are you doing right now?
I got two words for you, Sam. Believe that. I was up in a defensive stance. I was yelling at the TV. I was clapping with every single possession. I was screaming. I was slapping the couch after stops at timeouts. I came downstairs. I probably went through 3 bottles of water in that fourth quarter, trying to get my voice right to come on here and love up everybody on the Minnesota Timberwolves for a 30-point turnaround on the road in Denver against the defending champs to win not 1, not 2, but 3 road games against the defending champs in Denver after they lost one time all season or all playoffs last year in Denver. My hands, I don't know. What do we see? Can you see my hands? They're still shaking a little bit.
They're tingling. They're tingling.
My heart's great. My heart's great. I can't feel my hands. It was just like Game 6 at Target Center, man. I still have a headache from being there that night. 4 days later, 3 days later, whatever it is. And now, man, my hands just will just be shaking until we get this thing rolling at Target Center on Wednesday. So I can't wait. But oh my goodness, what a fourth quarter from really the whole second half from the Timberwolves to snatch this thing away.
Yeah, as Jeff points out, they beat Scott Foster as well, but that might be the good luck charm. I think their record's actually really good with Scott Foster now for some reason. We'll get into that. Yeah, it's actually above average. The Minnesota Timberwolves were dead. I declared them dead. I was one of many. I said it's over. They end the first half with a clunky 90 seconds. They had the ball down 10, chance to cut it to single digits. You'd be feeling okay. Instead, they bungle a couple possessions. They have a botched fast break. Nuggets go up 15 at the break. First 90 seconds out of halftime, the Nuggets have a quick 5-0 run. It's a 20-point game. So it's 58-38, Jack. And I thought to myself in my mind, okay, I mean, if the Timberwolves, are going to win this thing, they got to get to 100, I think. The Nuggets would then have to score 42 or less, or less than 42 to not get 100 in basically 2 full quarters of basketball. That's not possible. I declared their time of death, like 10 minutes, 30 seconds to go in the third quarter. From that point on that I buried this team, they go on a 60-32 run. That is absurd against Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and I don't know how it happened. What's your best interpretation as to how they flipped the switch so out of nowhere to do what they just did?
It takes guys with a ton of dog and a ton of heart in them, and it's what we saw from the Minnesota Timberwolves all season. I would like to issue a formal apology for all of our everydayers here that have had to deal with our horrific medical examining performance from Sam and I over the last 10 days or so with falsely declaring people dead. But my goodness, I mean, it just felt like, I talked to Rudy Gobert in the locker room after Game 6, and Rudy told me, he said, I feel like that team does not have the capacity to play as hard as they can for as long as we can. So if we play as hard as we can last longer than they can. And that is exactly what happened in this game. The Timberwolves, were really stuck in the mud offensively, but their defense kept them in it. And we'd see games last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, well, that's a 30, 35 point hole at halftime. But instead, it's 15. They band together. You get Anthony Edwards on Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray for the Nuggets, I want to say he was sitting on 24 points at halftime.
Yes.
And 35 so he had 11 points the rest of the second half. Anthony Edwards totally got in Jamal Murray and forced him to go east to west instead of north south and all their 2-man game stuff. And you could just tell that Murray and Jokic had zero confidence in the guys around him. I mean, you look at after the third quarter, no one else on the Nuggets had more than 5 points.
No.
And the Wolves did a great job of pressuring those two guys and forcing everyone else to beat them. And no one else was able to beat them. And then, I mean, you talked about, there was a comment about Scott Foster. I mean, I'm not normally one to talk about the officiating, but it was pretty clear that the refs were trying to give everything to Denver to try to make it as close of a game as they possibly could. And much like they did in that Suns series, we saw in the last series, the Wolves just found a way. They just kept playing hard. They didn't let it bother them. We'll get into Karl-Anthony Towns, but Karl-Anthony Towns got called for probably 3 just horrendous calls. And he didn't complain one time. He just kind of walked away, recomposed himself, and just kept hammering away and kept his head down and kept playing excellent defense on Nikola Jokic. And the entire team fed off of that. They could have screamed, whined, complained, fractured when they got down 20, but instead they banded together. They got in the huddle and just said, we got to play harder. We got to play harder than these guys. We got to play more connected than these guys. And that's exactly what happened. And you also have to credit the Timberwolves bench. The Timberwolves did not have much energy at all when they were down 20. And then they go on this really quick 5-0 run, and the Wolves bench is super into it. They're dapping guys up. They're yelling. They're screaming. They're jumping up and down, just injecting life into all of these guys. And that's such an underrated part of this team, is that the way that they support each other through thick and thin, no matter what's happening. I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns picks up his 5th foul, has to go out, and he's just out there screaming his, lungs out for Naz Reid on the bench, just fired up, and everyone's locked in. And I'm telling you, I was around this team last year. I was around this team 2 years ago, and how much more connected this team is than those teams were is unbelievable. When you think about how many guys have already been paid, all these guys have very defined roles. They know what to expect when they get into a game, what's going to be asked of them. And they all really genuinely love each other. And I think that is where all of this comeback is rooted in, is their ability to stay connected, trust like they have all season long, that if they just play really hard, they can come back in games. And it's extremely rare in today's NBA that you get a team that comes back into games with their defense. Most teams try to, shoot 4 or 5 quick threes to try to cut into the lead immediately and cut it from 20 down to 11 or, something like that. But this Wolves team, they just kind of kept chipping away at it and trusted that their defense would win out. And that's exactly what happened. And I was just thinking about that conversation that I had with Rudy Gobert, that entire fourth quarter, and the whole third quarter, because it ended up being true. I mean, you looked at Nikola Jokic, you looked at Jamal Murray, and both of those guys were completely gassed. And it's understandable considering how big of a load they had to carry in the last series, even though it was a 5-game series. And then, what they've had to do throughout this series as well, just to get back in the series and then take a 3-2 lead. It's really hard to sustain night after night.
It was almost too tiring for Jokic to try to pound his way into the paint in the fourth quarter. He was settling. He was forcing threes, which is not his bread and butter. He can make them, but not consistently. He was at one point 24% in the playoffs. 12 of 50 he hit in this game, as Reggie Miller pointed out. A couple other nuggets for you, no pun intended. The Timberwolves have set the all-time record for a deficit overcome in a Game 7, which was halftime based. So 15 points breaks the record of 11. But again, they were down 20 shortly after halftime. Road teams in Game 7s historically have like a 250 winning percentage. The Wolves buck that trend. Just unbelievable numbers that will sprinkle in as this show goes on. But where was the comment I want before we go to our first break? Yeah, from Peter. Epic games get names. What's the name of this game? Was it the J-Mac game? Was it the 60-32 run game? Is there a distinctive title to this game? Do we know it yet? Maybe we have to come up with it. If you have,
I've got a suggestion. That was the Karl-Anthony Towns legacy game. I mean, anything you want to say about Karl-Anthony Towns, throw it in the like any bad thing that has been said about Karl-Anthony Towns the last 8 years, the first 8 years of his career. Like after that performance, I feel like we can just throw that in the trash. Ant did not have. I mean, we can take our break now and talk about it afterwards. But I would say that's a Karl-Anthony Towns, legacy narrative changing game. That was incredible.
Yeah, we've also got Mile High Miracle and Resurrection game suggested. Let's talk about legacies. Let's talk about how this reshapes Karl, how it reshapes Rudy. Like Rudy's legacy bottomed out somewhere in the middle of this game and then came roaring back and now has a chance to really, really turn into something in this next series. And we'll talk about the budding legacy of Anthony Edwards, what it does for that, a guy who's on the rise. So many items to get to on the Locked On Wolves postcast. Please don't go anywhere. We are presented by Prize Picks tonight. It is the best fantasy sports app. Seriously, with more than 3 million members. I put some entries together this past week. A lot of fun. You pick more or less on 2 or more stats and watch the winnings roll in. Extra fun in the playoffs where every possession is intensified. You can also go across sports. You can get a little NBA playoff action, little NHL playoff action. It's the #1 fantasy sports app. Right now, you can go up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn 10 into 1,000 with basketball, hockey, and college entries today on Prize Picks. So check it out. Download the Prize Picks app. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Repeat offer. Download the app. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. We are also presented by FanDuel. Wolves were 4.5-point underdogs at FanDuel, and they covered in this winner-take-all time in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, futures, and more. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count like the Wolves did tonight. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com to look at odds and check out the Wolves-Mavs series at FanDuel. All right, Sam Ekstrom, Jack Borman, Locked On Wolves postcast. We're talking legacies. It is a 98-90 Timberwolves victory in Game 7. They are 2-0 all-time in Game 7s. 20 years apart, Jack. Anniversary. I love the videos today of reminiscing on the Wolves-Kings Game 7. I was 12. I don't know how old were you, Jack, but I remember it. Very different part of my life. I was a kid. Kevin Garnett going off. Chris Webber rattling out the 3. Incredible. I think this game beats that game. I think this is the best win in Timberwolves history. Going down 20 on the road, coming back from that deficit. I don't know if there's a one-off playoff game, in a previous season. I'm trying to think of the other games in the 2004 run. I can't think of a game that threatens this game in Minnesota Timberwolves history. This is the #1 win. Care to nominate any others? I think this has got to be the leader.
No, this is 1-1 without a doubt. There's definitely some, I think, some weight to the fact of doing it the first time. That there's certainly something special in that, no question about it. When it comes to establishing a fan base and trying to prove yourself as an organization, especially how young the Timberwolves franchise was and how little it had accomplished to that point. But I think when you consider the fact that these were the defending champions, you did it on the road. And you did something that no other team in NBA history had done not just in this game, but also in the previous game. I mean, you win by 45 points. You're up by 50 at one point. Largest lead over a defending champion NBA playoff history. Biggest win over defending champion in playoff history. And then you turn around in game 7 and you look dead in the water and you just find a way. There's no question about it for me. And especially when you consider what Anthony Edwards has done to put this entire team on his back from – really when Karl-Anthony Towns got hurt. So like March 6th up until today. And then you get Karl-Anthony Towns to be like, you know what, you're struggling. I'm going to put the team on my back and I got you until you come along. Rudy comes along. And then, Mike hits a couple of shots. You get Naz Reid in the fourth. Like what Karl-Anthony Towns did to do that, I think is so special, and that it just so signifies and defines what this team has been all about, is that it's kind of been a whack-a-mole of like different guys putting out different fires at different times and coming up huge. And it just goes to show how much this team trusts each other. And I think that also adds another level of how special this game is. So it's unquestionably this game for me, Sam.
All right, Rudy Gobert legacy. Let's start with that. We'll also get into Cat. We'll also get into Edwards. Rudy Gobert in the first half, 3 points, 4 rebounds, 0 of 3 from the field. Charles Barkley calling for him to be benched in the second half. Rudy comes out in the second half, scores 10 points, finishes with 13 and 9, and critically 7 of 9 from the line. And it was, in fact, a Rudy Gobert dunk that spurred the 60-32 run. At 58-38, nice pass by Cat, Rudy down the lane for the stuff. But also on Rudy, I think maybe the singular play of the game, just from a momentum and improbability standpoint, was the Gobert heave from 17 feet out. Jack, I'll put you on this. Is that the longest shot he's hit this season? Has he hit a longer shot? Because he threw it up, hand in his face, cans it. I believe it went from Wolves up 2 to Wolves up 4. Finish to this game for Rudy, who took a lot of arrows in this series. Jokic made him look bad at times. They had to move Rudy off of Jokic. We acknowledge that. But also, Rudy, with the Draymond Green criticism, the Charles Barkley criticism, taking all the criticism from everywhere, with the way he finished this game, and now gets a chance against not Jokic in the next series, a chance to win a title 2 series from now. How big is that for Rudy to end the game that way and be an asset in that comeback to help win the series?
I mean, it's huge. I said in the first half that, Rudy wasn't setting very many screens. He just wasn't involved offensively. He didn't look confident in anything he was doing. I mean, he was still playing excellent defense and was doing a phenomenal job of protecting the rim. They were still getting crushed on the offensive glass. So that was a huge problem, even with him in the game, which was unacceptable. And I threw out the question in our Canis Hoopus Slack of, do you try to do what you did in game 2, where, you put Kyle Anderson at the 5, you have Kyle Anderson set a ton of screens, play on the short roll in the middle of the floor and just spray the ball around to shooters and try to spread out the defense that way to try to open up some driving lanes for Ant and get him going offensively. Because Slow-Mo played really well. And, I don't know how many minutes did Slow-Mo play in this game? He played 4 minutes in this game, but I thought he was excellent in the 4 minutes that he played. Mm-hmm. So I thought that might be a thing. So what does Rudy Gobert do? He comes out in the third quarter. He draws 3 consecutive fouls, sealing or posting up on the inside, and did a much better job of, instead of getting guys on his back in a more straight up post up, to sealing them so that guys could throw the ball over the top, where he's in a better position to catch the ball and score than with his back to the basket. So he draws 3 fouls that way. That helps get the Wolves in the bonus for the last 8 minutes. And I think that softened up the defense in a way that it forced the Nuggets to not foul when they were playing defense, and it created some easier looks for the Wolves, which was really important. And then in the fourth quarter, he does the same thing, and he's getting to the free throw line, and he makes, Sam, for Rudy Gobert to make 4 of his 5 free throws in the fourth quarter, and with how active he was setting screens, flipping screens, re-screening. I know you had the one just totally bogus, illegal screen there after Ant got pretty much intentionally fouled by KCP, and then it turns into a Murray bucket the other way, and that's a 4-point swing that could have been huge in this game if the Nuggets end up winning. But for Gobert to not only have the wherewithal to fight for position and draw fouls, even if he didn't know if his teammates were going to pass in the ball, was really, really important. And you got to give a lot of credit to his teammates for still believing in him. Especially, I think the third quarter really helped. When he did draw those fouls in the post, that they wanted to keep feeding him. And then he got more involved in the pick and roll, which was great. And I thought his screening was tremendous for Anthony Edwards in the fourth quarter. And I think that's things that people that are watching, especially someone like Draymond Green, who's just a straight up hater. And as a fellow hater of other teams, other players, I understand that energy. But from Chuck, I mean, these guys don't watch the Wolves enough to know what Rudy's really doing offensively. But in their defense, I mean, sure, Rudy was not setting very many screens. He was just camped in the paint and clogging a lot of spacing. And he was much more active in the second half, which was really important. And to answer your other question about his longest, is it his,
longest make of the year?
Longest make? I don't know. I think he had one other shot from almost the exact same spot that I can remember that was pretty similar.
He had one against Phoenix, actually, in the first series. That was kind of wild.
Yeah. So that might be the one. But, I screamed, "Come on, Hakeem," after he made that shot. So, I'm secure enough to admit, I made some noises I shouldn't have made after that shot went in. But good for him, man. I mean, he was going to hear it if they lose this game. But the way that he just stuck with it is awesome.
Well, okay, let's move to Cat, the other big, who has a marvelous game. Other than the 5 fouls, a couple of which might have been questionable, particularly the one that was reviewed and upheld, where he got a lot of ball. But he goes for 23 and 12, 8 of 4 from the field, made really good decisions, had a clutch putback slam late after he got re-entered in the game. Big 3 in the game, even though he went 1 for 6 from downtown, but that was a very timely 3. He was outstanding. If the Wolves lose this game, unfortunately, we would have been compelled once again to talk about Cat's future. Is Cat going to be on the team next year? To get cap compliant, do they trade Cat? We would have had all those conversations. Bill Simmons tweeting, is this a Cat narrative changer for him? And it's hard to say no. I mean, with as good as Cat was for the majority of this series, it's vindication for him as well. The fact that with Edwards, who has kind of usurped him on this team, Edwards having an off night and Cat filling that void, enormous. Everything hinges on the fact that the Wolves went on a 60-32 run to end this game. And the careers of these guys, Cat included, now just have a totally different complexion.
It totally does. And I wasn't here to talk about it after game 6, obviously, but Karl-Anthony Towns was dominant in game. That was one of the most dominant 10-point performances I have seen in a while, because he played through him on the post. He got doubled. He made a ton of awesome passes and just completely tore apart the Nuggets defense with his playmaking, and helped get Anthony Edwards going on the second side and playing off the catch. And, he was tremendous in the post in this game too. The Nuggets kept the Wolves kept forcing switches onto Murray and Brown in the post. And Karl did a great job of not kind of flailing or moving awkwardly. He just made confident moves and scored probably 5 or 6 times with those 2 guys on him in the post. And then that was what allowed him to kind of step beyond the 3-point line, start shooting threes, and they were forced to double him. And that kind of softened things up for the Wolves to start attacking. And I think for what Karl did in the first half, he was 5 of 6 in the first half, and I think he had 13 points. I mean, he could have taken 4, 5, 6 more shots, and he passed up a few threes, but the reason why he did it was because he was trying to get these other guys going. And he did that in game 6. He trusted his teammates, and And that's really kind of what started the whole avalanche. So you can't blame him necessarily for trying to do that. But I think I'm just so impressed with his defense on Nikola Jokic. Like, I understand that, Karl hasn't necessarily been the greatest defensive player throughout his career. He's taken a huge step forward this season. He's been tremendous for most of the season. But the way that he took that challenge, and that's got to be an infuriating challenge for Karl to do that over and over and over again, with how much Jokic starts flopping when he gets tired, and how many insane shots he makes when you play perfect defense, how he, can spin and throw these crazy passes over the top of the defense. For him to stay disciplined for as much as he has, and find a way to be physical with Joker without just fouling him every time and getting under his skin is something that we've seen other players do to Cat a ton, over the years. And for him to do it in a way that literally no one else in the NBA has, especially over the last 2 seasons. I think this is the 21st time these two teams have played each other over the course of the last 2 seasons. And over that time frame, nobody has held Nikola Jokic to a lower field goal percentage than Karl-Anthony Towns. He's been tremendous. And in the way that he just stays composed, hasn't complained when he does get fouls called on him, and the way that he screws his head back on when he does have I think he's probably had one just really dumb foul on Jokic in each of these games. And the way that he just kind of snaps out of it and locks back in is incredible. And he deserves a ton of credit. And I think everything he did offensively tonight was really composed and really in the flow and in the rhythm. We saw in game 5, he really forced a lot of 2-point shots that was pretty problematic for the Timberwolves. And I thought the way that, he kind of took a step back and figured out, I got to let the game come to me more, and I got to be more aggressive as a playmaker and not necessarily, try to get my game going, especially on the drive, because of how many runouts that creates for the Nuggets going the other way on those missed bunnies at the rim. The way that he completely, took that game 5 performance to heart and completely changed his approach in game 6 and game 7 was tremendous. And I think it goes to show for all the people that did want to trade Karl-Anthony Towns, which, earlier in the season at the time, like, trust me, I understand every single team building implication that is involved with that, but it goes to show how important and how badly you need a number 2 scorer next to Anthony Edwards, because there are inevitably nights where he's not going to give you 38 points every single night. Like, it's really hard to do that, especially against a really good defense. And for Karl to be, one of the most efficient players in the entire league offensively next to Ant, who can get it done at all 3 levels, is crucial. And it gives you a guy that you can play through when Ant's not on the floor. And all of the reasons in the pro column for why you have Karl-Anthony Towns on your team in this game completely shined. And I think he's only going to get more confident as he goes on, because he's seeing now what the proof of concept is and what the blueprint is for him to be successful. We'll see what changes defensively. I would assume that he guards Lively in the Maverick series, and you have Rudy Gobert playing off of Derrick Jones Jr. is what I would suspect they try to do first. But if he can continue the same defensive discipline, that he's had in this round and maintain his approach offensively, it's really hard not to like the Wolves' chances in the Western Conference Finals. Yeah, I mean, we just touched on 2 guys in Rudy and Cat who had stigmas because they couldn't advance in the playoffs. And I almost think that now that the stakes are higher, you're almost playing looser because you've now overcome that. Like, you've gotten to a stage where nobody can question you. Rudy's never been out of the second round. Cat had never been out of the first round. Now they're both in the Western Conference Finals, and they've got Anthony Edwards flanking the whole thing. Quickly on his legacy here, because I don't think that he's going to get the full-fledged treatment because of the way he played. 6 of 24, 2 of 10 from 3. I think that the box score is a little unkind to him because of how many passes he made early out of doubles. Maybe didn't adjust his mindset soon enough that he needed to just catch and go. He didn't need to wait for the double to come. Everybody else was cold. He had to go faster. But he was still an energy source. He was still really good defensively against Murray in the second half. 16, 8, and 7 raw totals. Assist leader on the team is nothing to scoff at. But his star now gets the chance to shine even brighter. I don't know if this isn't the closeout game he had against Phoenix, but now he's afforded another series
to paint an even different, an even more elaborate picture, which is, I think, only going to bolster the legacy talk. So I don't know if it's this game fueling it, but the fact that he gets more of these is just huge for the Edwards brand.
Yeah, and he's going to get more single coverage in this next series, because when you think about, guys like Josh Green and Dante Exum and Derek Jones, are all guys that, the Mavericks are going to try to put on Anthony Edwards in one-on-one situations. And I think, to speak to what you're talking about tonight with, him needing to go a little faster, I think, when he played a little bit slower against the Suns, and he kind of brought the ball out further to where that a top of the key extended is, where that coach's box line is, he dragged the defense out there quite a bit to then make it easier for him to throw that pass to Cat or Rudy or whoever, Nas, whoever it is at the top of the key, so that then they can play 4-on-3 behind the play with more spacing. But the Nuggets were so smart about the way that they timed their doubles and their blitzes that Ant really couldn't do that. And they made passes really difficult for him. And you have to credit him too, because I think what makes Anthony Edwards so special to me is that there are not many, offensively minded superstars in this league who are struggling, pretty mightily offensively with the way the defense is playing them. And they get back in their offensive flow by turning their defensive intensity up to a 12 out of 10, and then using that intensity and that energy that you create for your team and for yourself, and then using that on the offensive end of the floor is exactly what I thought Ant did tonight. We got out in transition a couple times for scores. He got to the free throw line once, I believe, in the second half. He had that attack down on KCP that didn't get called, which was really helpful for him. And then, his attack, he gets into the paint, and that's what unlocks Nas Reed to get that offensive rebound and get fouled. And then you have the Nas Reed, put back dunk when, all those guys are starting to think about, how do we protect against Ant in the paint? That's when it unlocks all these offensive rebounders to kind of get going. And I just think it's so special for Ant to be defended in so many different ways over the course of, really the last 6 weeks of the season when Cat was out. And then in the first round series against the Suns, and then in this series against the Nuggets, he has seen everything. He had a smaller defender in KCP. What does he do? He walks him down into that kind of just beneath the free throw line and posts him up and hits the mid-range turnaround. He drags Aaron Gordon out on small to small screens to force a switch, and then he just bolts right by him. He gets off of it early and then gets it back on the backside against teams that are loading up on him in the gaps. And then in this series, you see a lot more blitzing where he has to really get off the ball early and then be more active as a cutter, or really flow better behind the play off the ball to catch the ball in the corner and then attack from there, or just shoot open threes in the slot. I mean, he's seen everything that he could see conceivably in this really since the first week of March here over the last 2 months and change. And he's answered the bell in every single way. And I think, you're going to look at the stats and you're going to say, oh, it wasn't a good Ant game. But I think if you look at his quarter by quarter numbers and you just look at how resilient he was in that third quarter and then in that fourth quarter when all of his teammates got going, I think also sometimes superstars just feel the need, like, even if their teammates are rolling, like, oh, well, now it's the time and now I got to get going and I got to force my imprint on the game. It didn't really feel like Ant, just kind of, stole the controls from Mike or Nas or Karl when they were rolling. It just kind of felt like he got his where it fit in. And he was so willing to throw passes. Like you think of the two corner kickouts that he had to Jaden McDaniels in that right corner for three in the midst of that run to blow the game open. I mean, talk about trusting your teammate when a guy's struggling. I think this is the first time in Jaden McDaniels' career that he's had 20 plus points in back-to-back games. A heck of a time to do it in the two biggest games of his career.
Unreal.
But it's just everything about Ant, whether it's his intangibles, it's his athleticism and his physical abilities, it's his decision making, it's his mental makeup, it's him, his charisma and the way he's yelling at Charles Barkley to bring his, rear end to Minneapolis. It's crazy, and it's only going to get better because the kid's 22 years old, and I'd be lying to you if there are times in the middle of the day where I'm working or doing whatever, and I'm just like, what is Ant going to look like when he's 26 or 27? Because it's legitimately scary to think about when you think he came into the league at 18 and people thought he was a football player that didn't like basketball and wasn't going to work hard to get better. And now he's this good at 22 is just terrifying to think about what he might become. And the crazy thing is this NBA, not just this Western Conference, but Larry O.B. is up for the taking for anybody. And if he gets one at 22, it is going to be it is going to be real hot and sweaty, and your mind's going to go places that are pretty crazy if that happens.
Yep. Not going to be able to contain the hype train at that point. When we return on the postcast, we're nowhere close to done. We'll talk about the Naz Reid stretch that sealed this thing, the Jaden game, and plenty more odds and ends to clean things up. Maybe even get into the Mavs preview. We got a lot of previewing to do. Some people in the comments are already saying the Wolves have no chance. We'll address that coming up on the Locked On Wolves postcast. Nobody's stock is higher than the Wolves right now. But let's get to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising costs of inflation, pay off your debt, your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom. So with Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. I've used it. It works really, really well, and helps you out, helps you grow that portfolio. And whether you're a seasoned investor or you're looking for that extra guidance, that was definitely me when I turned to Yahoo Finance. Gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination. It's a holistic look at financial news cycles, including breaking news, editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Over 90 million users each month at Yahoo Finance, yahoofinance.com. So for comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. Your #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com, yahoofinance.com. All right, a little play-by-play scroll here. This is the sequence where I put my hands in the air and I said they did it. It's happening. And it was Naz Reid. So under 6 to go in the fourth quarter, Naz Reid blocks Jokic at the rim. This wasn't his best block of the sequence. This was the first block. I think it was from behind. And that, led to a Wolves run out. They actually didn't convert it. But moments later, Naz Reid, 3-point, 2-foot shot to put the Wolves up 5. A few moments after that, Naz Reid, offensive rebound, putback gets fouled, scores 2 free throws, again to put the Wolves back up 5. Edwards misses a 3 next time down. Naz skies, climbs the ladder, dunks it in. Wolves up 7. Now it's a 3-possession game. Now your mind is thinking, we got this. Mike Conley with the pickpocket steal. Naz hits Edwards with the assist for the backbreaking 3. 3 minutes of Naz put the Wolves up 10. And at that point, I think we all knew that this thing was real. Naz wasn't super active in this game until the fourth quarter. And was it game 1, Jack, where Naz, again, very quiet until crunch time? And again tonight, Naz Reid helped close this game with a sequence on both ends of the floor that was breathtaking.
It sure was. I mean, I think Naz Reid, his playoff career high before game 1 of this series was 13 points, which he did in game 3 of the previous series. He had 14 points in the fourth quarter of game 1 of this series. And then for him to have bookend amazing fourth quarters in this series, for him to do what you just laid out, I think is incredible. And, it really shuts people up that, we're saying, oh, Malik Monk should have won 6-man. Well, obviously it's a regular season award, but, it really validates what the true meaning of a 6-man is, because, part of a 6-man is that when someone gets injured, you're the next guy up. So I certainly think that your numbers as a starter, filling in for a guy that gets injured, especially someone like Karl-Anthony Towns, who plays your position, is a 4-time All-Star, was an All-Star this season, for Naz to raise his level the way that he did over those 20 some odd games, and then to do it again in this postseason in two times, exact same situation where Karl picks up his 5th foul, has to leave the game. Naz Reid, a lot of guys are cold off the bench in that scenario. you want to look at when Naz played. The good thing is that Naz, played from around the 5-minute mark of the third quarter to around just under the 11-minute mark of the fourth quarter. So he was still pretty warm, which was a luxury for the Timberwolves. But to still come in, you're out for 3.5 minutes, and you're just rooting on your team, and then all of a sudden you got to go in, you got to guard Jokic, you got to be the number 2 scorer next to Ant. For him to do all those things and just take it as they come and just totally play in the flow and the rhythm, and for a guy that in parts of this series has looked, not confident at all, makes this so much more impressive for him to just find his game at the right times and have this knack for delivering for the Timberwolves in big moments. And he's truly, I think, outside of Anthony Edwards, creates more positive energy for this team than anybody. With his dunks, with his crazy layups, with his putbacks, with everything. And I think he just, there are playoff risers, that we talked about this, the guys that just raise their level in the playoffs, especially in big moments. And Naz Reid has certainly been one of those guys. Even though, you go game by game in his game logs and you're probably not that impressed, but when you think about at the times of the game in which his production has arrived, has been so pivotal for this team. And I'm just so thrilled for Naz personally, because when you think about what he first was when he came into this league 4 years ago to what he is now, you just can't be happier for a guy that's had to grind for everything that he has right now. And now you talk about guys who get a bigger stage now. He's a guy that, everyone in the world now gets to see what Naz Reid has done for this Timberwolves team. And I'm really excited for Naz. So I'm thrilled for him, and just huge minutes for him. And it kind of goes to what we've talked about all season on this show and on the basketball party, Sam. It's like everybody on this team just trades off having these huge nights of impact at for 5 or 6 minute stretches of a game that can completely, turn a game from a close win to a blowout win, from a loss to a win, that just stick with them and give all these guys confidence. And so it's been so fun to watch.
And the bench would have been much maligned had Naz not had that stretch, because Anderson had basically 4 minutes of energy, didn't really produce. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was pretty bad on the offensive end, and they needed that. They needed that last pick-me-up from the bench that they hadn't gotten yet. Naz gave it to him in the clutch. Wolves win 98-90. Jaden, I had to double-check, but you're correct, has never scored back-to-back 20-plus point games in his career, Jack. And to continue the trend of bad Sam predictions, I said after Game 6 on the postcast, I said we wasted the Jaden game. Like, they won by 45. They didn't need that Jaden game, probably. And he delivered again, maybe even more impressively considering the stage. He missed his first shot of Game 6. He's made 15 of 19 cents. What is going on here?
Stat.
Yeah. The Wolves are nigh unbeatable with Jaden playing that way, shooting that way as a corner 3 threat. I wish he would have packed that one home with 20 seconds to go. The bounce up to himself, that would have been such a mic drop move. Even though the Nuggets hated it, probably a little disrespectful, probably shouldn't do it again. But man, Jaden, unbelievable. I can't believe what he gave them the last 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about guys that are built for it and competitive. Like, I'll never forget this. Dane Moore shared something on his podcast I think when Jaden was a rookie, saying that there was an EYBL game and Jaden McDaniels blocked James Wiseman and then called him sewer trash in a game. And didn't say anything the whole game, and then said that to James Wiseman. You've seen him kind of be this needler and this guy that gets under people's skin. Like Klay Thompson wanted to fight him 3 minutes into a game earlier this season because of him just finding ways to get under guys' skins. And he certainly did that again. I mean, you talk about what he did at the end of the game. I just think it's hilarious because it's things like that have to be in the makeup of these guys to fill those types of roles. But for Jaden McDaniels, I think we all know, Wolves fans know, that the talent is there. We've seen it in moments. We've seen, we saw it. We had they have KD, but we have Jaden McDaniels game in the last series, right? And then, he has 9, 25, 5, 18 in the last series. So it's just about stringing it together. But, when you think about how much more confident I think he looks in the way that he's willing to now pump fake threes and attack off the dribble and be a playmaker. He only had 1 assist in this game, but I would not be surprised if he had 3 or 4 potential assists, and he had a couple of hockey assists as well, where his drives and corner kickouts to the opposite side, helped unlock things for this team. And I think if Jaden McDaniels can become a consistent third scorer for this team, not just the rest of this postseason, but really into next season and beyond, taking what he's learned, what works in these playoffs and carrying it forward, I think that's going to be huge for this team. Because do you think it's there? Like, I think it's there. It's just about finding ways to be consistent and remain confident in his shot and what he does. Because when he's confident and, and he plays within himself, he plays within the flow, but he's aggressive. I mean, great things happen. So it's fun to see him, and obviously great to see Ant. Ernie Johnson asked him who gets the game ball for this one, and Ant just said Jaden McDaniels. 2 words. No, there was only 2-word response. The way these guys support him and appreciate his willingness to still do all the dirty work, even when he's only taking, 3 or 4 or 5 shots in a game, is super admirable. And it's why everyone on this team totally respects him and believes in him. And it's again, another guy that you couldn't be happier for, because, they were raised by Wolves, and we appreciate the guys that, work on their games and get better and stay here. And Jaden's going to be here for a long time. And I'm very excited to continue to watch him shine.
Thank you, Gerson. Should we give our flowers to Gerson's work for assembling the Nazes and the Jadens? The line is in for game 1. Guess the line if you haven't seen it yet. This is a Wednesday, 7:30 tip, Target Center, Wolves Mavs. Guess the line.
5.5.
Very close. 4.5. Favoring the Wolves. Over under 206.5. Dallas plus 150 on the money line. So the Wolves are going to be.
About how this over under in this game was like 198 and still went under. It was incredible.
Oh yeah. Yep. And it's a game 7. I think that's somewhat to be expected. Last time the Wolves were in a game 7, it was 83-80 against the Kings all those years ago. Someone also pointed out much earlier in the comments, Timberwolves held the Nuggets under 100 in all 4 wins. And I believe it was was it 99 in game 1? Then it was 80. Then it was 70. Then it was 90. It wasn't just barely under 100. It was like way under 100 in a couple of those wins.
And one other note along that line for the Rudy Gobert crowd. You look at now, I think it's the 4 fewest or lowest scoring games for the Nuggets in the Jokic era. Rudy Gobert has been on the opposing team in all 4 of them. So, while Rudy may not have the most success guarding Jokic one-on-one, it is unquestionable that having Rudy on the floor still really helps shut down all the players around him, which is a really important part of stopping Jokic, is finding a way to make it difficult on all the other guys too.
Jokic ends with 34, 19, and 7. So it's hard to say the guy's unbelievable. I thought he was a liability in the fourth quarter in some capacity. I just think and you mentioned this earlier, but I think it's worth doubling down on. The Wolves took him out of the paint. And what he did in game 5, where he wore them down so badly and just, hit those tough angle bank shots and ones, just kind of a war of attrition down there. He forced it. Made very un-Jokic-like decisions, didn't trust his teammates. Aaron Gordon, non-factor in this game. How big was that, too? I mean, we talked about the Wolves role players stepping up, the Nazes, the Jadens. Aaron Gordon, 4 points. Michael Porter Jr., 7. KCP, 5. I mean, those are the numbers that you point to if you're Denver right now.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Aaron Gordon did a phenomenal job of obviously knocking down open shots that came to him throughout this series. But I also think the Timberwolves did a much better job of, I personally think that if you're doubling Nikola Jokic, it takes away more of those shots for Aaron Gordon, because what's happening is when the Wolves double Jokic from the top side, the difference between the Timberwolves and the Lakers and the Mavericks, or whoever else the Nuggets would have played, is that outside of the 2 centers that the Wolves have on the floor, you look at Jaden McDaniels he's taller than Karl. So he's 7 feet. He's got a 7'2" wingspan or 7'3" wingspan. You've got Anthony Edwards, who is 6'4.5", who has like a 6'9" wingspan. And then you have Mike Conley, who's one of, a very smart team concept defender, or Nickeil Alexander-Walker in there, who's 6'5", has a 6'11" wingspan. All those guys flying around and rotating, they have the length to do so and to cover for each other and to communicate and make it so the Nuggets can't just go pass around the perimeter, extra shot, wide open corner three every single time. Like, the Wolves did an unbelievable job of flying around and rotating behind the doubles on Jokic. There were a couple of cross-court skip passes that Jokic made to create wide open threes because he's just that good of a passer. And you'll live with some of those, right? Because, you're trying to play the percentages. But I think that's a huge part of it too, is that activity behind it created so many fewer open shots than we saw for the Nuggets in the 3 games that they won in this series. And yeah, I think it kind of neutralized Aaron Gordon a little bit. He didn't get as many clean, open jump shots. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, again, was a guy that normally has been pretty good attacking closeouts throughout his career, especially in the playoffs, but just did not really get the opportunity to do so against Mike Conley, because Mike Conley was just on him like glue the second he caught the ball. And then it was nice to finally see the Nuggets bench come down to earth in these last 2 games. I think the Nuggets had 5 bench points tonight. They had 0 bench points entering the 4th quarter of Game 6. So it was really nice to see, what we thought was going to be a huge strength for the Timberwolves kind of win out in the end. But yeah, I think you also got to look at Michael Porter Jr., right? Michael Porter Jr. in this series really struggled to be consistent. I think, we kind of talked about, like, did we just get the Michael Porter Jr. game in game, in game 1 when he had 20 points, he made 4 of his 7 threes, and the Nuggets still lost at home. Michael Porter Jr. only had one other game in this series where he scored more than 9 points. It was game 4. He had 21 points, and he made 4 of his 5 threes. And the rest of the series, he had 4 points, 6 points, 8 points, and 7 points. And he shot a combined 4 of 21 from 3 in games 4, 5, 6, and 7. Like, that's just tough, And again, like, the Nuggets generated plenty of open shots, especially in these last 2 games, and they just didn't knock them down. And it's shots like those that they made pretty much the entire postseason last season. Then you want to talk about Jokic, right? Nikola Jokic last season in the playoffs, he shot 46% on almost 4 threes a game last year. In 2022, so the season before, he shot 27%. Or 27.8% on 3.5 threes a game. This postseason, he shot, this is not including tonight, 27.9% on 4 threes a game. So he had this amazing 3-point shooting stretch last season and then kind of came back down to earth, but you nailed it with keeping him out of the paint. In these last 2 games, they forced him to take more threes than he wanted to. And I just think Joker was gassed. He didn't, like you said, he did not have the energy to just force a switch onto Rudy Gobert, walk him down into the paint, and then score from there. And I thought that was pretty telling, especially in Game 6. They didn't really play through him all that much. And to me, that was a sign that, that was just not going to last, playing through him at the level that they did in Game 5.
All right, final thoughts. Let's move ahead to Wolves Mavs. Got a little sidetracked there. We were going to get into the line was 4.5. Wolves favored. This is a different team now. I mean, it would have been different with Shea, with a dynamic scoring guard versus a dynamic big. But now you've got Luka and Kyrie. They just beat Shea and OKC in 6 games. Regular season, I want to say, Jack, that the Mavericks load managed in 2 of the 4, correct? Were there 3 or 4 meetings between the 2? But then the Mavericks beat them once. Wolves beat them once. Is that accurate to your memory?
I believe so.
I'll double check that.
I can do some double checking on that, but I do know that the Wolves lost the game that Kyrie and Luka both played in. I'm pretty confident of that. And I think Kyrie only played in one of the games, or both Kyrie and Luka only played in one of the games. And I don't think the Wolves have played the Mavericks since the trade deadline, and they're a completely different team after the trade deadline, obviously, with acquiring PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford.
And PJ Washington was a key player for them in this last series win. He's an outside threat. The Mavs are a good team. They have had their fits and starts. They looked like they were doomed late last year with this core, and now they're in the Western Finals for the second year out of 3. So just because you have home court, This is not going to be a cakewalk, but some disagree in the comments. Some are saying it's a great matchup for the Wolves. Some are saying it's a terrible matchup for the Wolves because of how much better offensively the Mavs are than the Nuggets. What do you think?
I don't think the Mavs are all that better offensively, frankly. Like post All-Star, the Nuggets had a better offensive rating and the Nuggets had a better defensive rating, and they had a net rating that was more than twice as good, almost 3 times as good as Dallas. And no question that I think Dallas actually improved more defensively after they made those trades than they did offensively, to be honest with you. Obviously they have more spacing now around Luka. They have really good, hard roll threat that's just killed the Wolves over the years in Daniel Gafford. But I think it's a really interesting series in that the Nuggets are able to play bigger and more physical than Dallas is. Derek Lively has been an awesome lottery rookie for the Mavs all season this year. He had some really important plays down the stretch of that fourth quarter last night to help them seal that series win. But how he deals with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, I think is going to be really interesting. Like Rudy Gobert has been tremendous this season, especially against rookie centers in the league between Lively and Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. So I'm really curious to see how he plays because Gobert is a lot more physical than Chet Holmgren is. And obviously, Zubac is really physical, but I don't think it was, if my memory serves me correctly, I just think, not having Kawhi and then Paul George not playing as great as he did for, a couple of those games that the Clippers lost and James Harden, obviously being playoff James Harden, didn't help them either. So I'm really curious to see how Lively's going to deal with the physicality in the paint. And then, you talk about role guys needing to step up. Even since the trade deadline, you've seen some hilarious box scores of Luka and Kyrie going for like 70 points between the two of them, and the rest of the team only scoring 35 points. So there are going to be some games where there's a player that's going to have 25 points that averages only 10. And then there's going to be games where someone who averages 12, 13, 14 points a game scores 2 points a game. So I'll tell you this. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid need to be a lot better in this series than they did in this previous series if the Timberwolves want to win and win pretty convincingly, because Dallas is going to play 7 or 8 guys, and they can swap out some different pieces. I think Dallas is probably like 9, 10, 11 is probably a little bit better than what the Wolves have. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how deep the two teams go, and I think you'll see some pretty wild schematic changes over the course of the series, just when you consider how many different options the Mavs have for guarding Ant, how many different options the Wolves have for guarding Luka and Kyrie. But it's going to be another series where Karl-Anthony Towns can really take advantage of having a smaller guy on him and kind of force the Mavericks to defend him before they defend Ant. And if that happens, then we've seen what happens in Game 6 and Game 7 tonight. So it'll be really fun to see what happens.
Did the digging. Wolves went 3-1 against the Mavericks this year. In the 3 wins, Luka and Kyrie missed 2 of them. Kyrie missed the other one. Luka played. And then when they all played, it was Mavericks 115-108 victory. Kyrie and Luka had 69 combined points in that game, 115-108.
Was that in Dallas?
That was in Dallas. Yep, that was a late charge by Dallas, I think. They kind of pulled away in clutch time, but they have not played since game 48 of the season. That was January 31st. So as you mentioned, very different team than the Wolves scouted during the year. The Wolves have 3 days to rest up. Game 1, Target Center on Wednesday at 7:30. I'm so excited. We get to keep doing postcasts. We'll be here after every game, either Jack Borman or Tyler Metcalf. Luke Inman, I hope he stayed up in Italy. He had to have, right? He's in Italy. He's the normal postcast host. I'm filling in, trying to keep the seat warm. But I hope that he's celebrating in the streets of Nice right now, waving his Naz Reid towel. He'll be back for the postcast as well in the Western Conference Finals. Celebrate, folks. Soak it in. Text your friends. Text your family. Go watch back the game. Go watch back Inside the NBA. Go watch back this postcast. Go consume all the Wolves content that you possibly can. We will have a Game 1 preview on the Minnesota Basketball Party, whose graphic I used for this template inexplicably. Sorry, graphics people. But enjoy that. Enjoy the next few days because it is going to be a celebratory moment in this town that does not get this a lot. There is a team in a conference final. The Wild have done that once. The Twins haven't done that since 2002. The Vikings have done it 3 times in the last 25 years. It doesn't happen around here. So soak it in. T-Wolves to the Western Conference Finals. Jack Borman, Canis Hoopus, at JRBorman13 on Twitter. I'm Sam Ekstrom, at Sam Ekstrom. Thank you so much for watching and engaging all the comments. All year long, you've been in the comments section, and you get to keep coming back, so thank you for that. We'll see you Wednesday on the Locked On Wolves postcast.